there are scientific truths that are certain, or fairly certain, but they're politically not acceptable at this moment. And we teach the models to say the politically correct thing, which is akin to lying.
Where we've had an enormous increase in the number of workers, but the amount of money that's gone into the capital investment, like the factories and all of the infrastructure around that, hasn't grown.
The US is spending 1.5% of every dollar the country spends on building out data centers. That's the biggest build out of anything since the building out the train tracks in the 1800s. Hello everyone. It's actually way less familiar faces than I thought it would be, which is really cool. So my name is Jeroen. I'm Dutch, as you can hear by my accent, and my partner says that my accent gets thicker the more tired I am. So tonight it is quite thick. And I've been loving playing with machine learning, as it was called about 9 years ago, or AI as it's called now, for the last 9 years. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I build companies, I build products, and I have kind of a software engineering background. So I've built with AI since about 7 or 8 years, way before ChatGPT existed and way before it was kind of cool and way before it was useful. I'll leave it there.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I'm the director of the WA Data Science Innovation Hub out at Curtin University. I'm super interested in the use of AI in industry and research. And we also have a thing at Curtin called Curtin AI and Research, which is empowering researchers with how they can use AI to do their thing. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with Jeroen tonight. Congratulations on the launch this week. Very exciting. Me and Jeroen have had this conversation, I don't know, a dozen more times. And we figured we should probably do it in public, because when we do have this conversation, it's often very different than what we say in public. So hence the more intimate gatherings. So
So we're just going to pretend that you're not here, and that we're just two friends nerding out about AI, productivity, economics, like we do every few weeks. And sometimes that means we might skip a few steps because we go a bit more detailed than you would normally see. We might also pull our punches a bit less than normally. And so if we speak for a big audience and someone's like, yeah, what about jobs? We will
try to be going by next month.
We will be very polite and we have to think about the politicians we might have in the room and other things. And so tonight it's also been an experiment for us. Like, how is it, what happens if we share a bit more our real thoughts and worries and things we're excited about. So let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So not quite Chatham House rules. You're allowed to talk about what happens in the room, but please don't destroy them on LinkedIn. Be great. All right. What is one belief about AI that almost everyone in this room probably holds, but you think is completely wrong?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. Most people, either consciously or maybe subconsciously, believe that there is some special human quality or skill that AI never can do. AI will never be creative, or AI will never really think. It will never be intelligent. It will never have emotional intelligence, or whatever key words, and that's probably something you're really good at and you see as a core human essence. And then all the subsequent beliefs, like about what happens to jobs and the economy, is based on that kind of core assumption: AI will never do X, Y, Z. I think that is false. I think there is no reason to believe that AI can't do it all. Just to go really hard straight away.
Yeah, so my belief that I always shake my head at, it very much dovetails into what you have said. My belief is that this idea that as people are very worried that AI will get better and better, and then all of a sudden it'll break bad and take over or do something horrible. I think that this sort of is a fundamental misunderstanding of what artificial intelligence is and how it is different from the human mind. AI is a bit like a part of the brain, the neocortex, but humans are quite different. We have a limbic system, this animal brain, which contains all our instinctual drives and our desire to protect, all these evolutionary behaviors that we have developed over, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And this is, what drives fear and the desire to reproduce, all of this kind of really animal behaviors that are part of our old brain. And those are not integrated into AI. However, I do agree with you that there is no reason that they couldn't do that. I do not believe that those systems in the human brain are somehow fundamentally different. But the way we are building AI at the moment, even as it gets faster, better than a professor, they still are emotionless in that sense. So I don't worry about the AIs taking over just yet. There's not enough GPUs either. I don't know where they go.
No, because there's the production capacity is 5 million GPUs of AI data center quality a year. There's 8 billion humans, so that's about 1,000 times less. So if one GPU would equal one human brain, it's way less than that. Then you're still we have 1,000 times more thinking power. Yeah. So I think we're quite a while away before that. One kind of counter, and I'm a diehard AI optimist. I think if we adopt this well, then everything is going to be better. But the one counter argument to hey, AI won't take over is that of power seeking. And so let's say you give anyone an objective, like Lisa, help 1,000 people with Bloom. Then for Lisa to do that, there's two things that would always be useful for Lisa to do. Gain some control over the systems so she can achieve her goal, and accumulate some resources, again, to be able to work towards that goal. And so if you train a system to pursue goals, which we're making AI do more and more of, then one of the things it needs to learn automatically is how to seek power and accumulate resources as a sort of side step to get to those goals. And so are you not worried that AI, and I'm not worried about it, but I'm just, there might be a question that someone has, is getting really good at power seeking, and what are the consequences of that? Do you understand? Am I clear, or am I being?
Yeah. So if you give an AI a objective function, and that objective function is, not necessarily evil, but even could be accidentally evil, Lisa gains as much power as possible.
Definitely evil.
Yeah. Then I can see that going wrong. I suppose I put that onto people though. I mean, the way I see AI going bad is not necessarily the AI will come to its own conclusion, like in Terminator, that humans shouldn't exist. I see it as bad actors, bad humans, providing these optimization goals. I mean, the example that springs to mind, trying to find, setting an objective function for an AI, a machine learning model to find potential molecules that are likely to provide benefits. And if you flip that optimization function upside down, you can find the most toxic molecules and invent new poisons and things like that. Yep. So is that a function of the AI? Or is that a function of the person using it?
You'd probably end up in very similar circumstance you are now, right? That
dual use.
Countries invading other countries for power and resources.
Sorry. No.
10 years from now, what will people say was the biggest mistake we made during this early AI era? One more time. No, did you?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's okay. Do you want to start that one?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think that even though everyone thinks there's an AI bubble in terms of all these data center building data centers, GPU shortages and stuff, I think we will look back and we will still think that we are underinvesting in that kind of compute infrastructure. Because currently at the moment, even with all these massive data center builds, there's still all these supply chain problems with AI where, there's serious constraints on GPU fabrication and silicon fabrication. I think it will create geopolitical risks in places like Taiwan. I think we'll wish, even in places like Australia, that we started investing more in both local compute, sovereign compute, and the capability to create that. I think, in Australia particularly, I think we are just sitting on our hands when it comes to, local computing power. We're just sort of looking around and happy to use ChatGPT from American servers. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. And let me quantify a few things, and Alex knows these numbers because some of them he told me. If you look at the number of watts, like electricity use, on AI compute per person. So in Perth, it's a bit hard to find the numbers because there's so few data centers, but it's probably in the order of like 1 watt per person-ish. If all the plans of the government are coming through, then that might go to like 10 watts or so per user in the next 2 years. In the United States, they're building like at least 20 times that. So that's the number of energy in data centers is roughly equivalent to the number of compute. So they will have 20 times more compute per person available than we do. That's a big gap. It's not 10%, right? Normally, like difference is like 10% here, 10% there. No, 20 times. And so I'm quite aligned on that one. And then on the bubble effect, what I find fascinating and is that the US is spending 1.5% of every dollar the country spends on building out data centers. That's the biggest build out of anything since the building out the train tracks in the 1800s. So not when electricity was built out, or lights, or telecom, or in the oil booms. Like all of those pale in comparison to how much freaking money they're spending on building out data centers. And what does every major AI company say every quarter in their releases? We are compute constrained. We have more demand than we can service. And so this is mind blowing to me. Like, okay, we're spending as much as we've ever spent on anything, and we still cannot serve our customers in the way they want because we just have not built enough. So yeah, I think I agree. One question though, so far almost every technology goes something like this: undersupply, 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 and then all of a sudden the demand kind of flattens, and then you keep building supply, and then you get oversupply, and then you get a bubble, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that will happen, but just later, or what is your sense?
My sense is, it's possible it's happening. I suppose everyone calls what's happening now a bubble, but the reason I think it is not a bubble now is because the frontier AI labs would consume all of that additional data center capacity
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. They would love it.
Yeah.
It's certainly the constraint for the pre-training of their new models.
Yeah.
So we're already constrained. And if we into the future we get this stuff, I can't see a scenario where, how long has Moore's law held?
70 years.
70 years. Yeah. So it's possible in the future perhaps, but I can't see it at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we see things I think the common is we're in a massive bubble, everything will kind of collapse, and it might at 5 years or further in the future, but I see it the same. And one cool intuition is that we maybe tripled the data center capacity in the last 2 years, maybe a bit more, like AI data centers. But we went from, let's say, 1 million users to 1 billion users. So we have 1,000 times more users and only a little bit extra data center build out. And users went from using it from like, a few questions a week to daily usage, to some people having AI agents churning through tokens 24/7. And so the usage per user is up, the numbers of users is also up, so that the usage in total is probably up like 1 millionfold. We definitely didn't build 1 millionfold more data centers. So what the model providers had to do is they had to really focus on efficiency. So one of my predictions like 3 years ago was like these AI models will get massively bigger, like 100 times bigger. But that hasn't happened because what I forgot is that we don't have enough compute if everyone starts using it. And so I think that's one of the cool things. So I think there's just so much more demand if this, So I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the big things that everyone's talking about with AI is this increasing productivity, and that's its big use. One of your favorite talking points. Where
Both
does
of us, actually.
Sorry? Both of you?
Alex keeps harping up all about it too.
Yeah.
Where does productivity end? We currently produce a glut of products that are creating huge garbage patches. Production and distribution leverage substandard worker treatment for profit. Australians are working longer hours than ever, but are not keeping up with the cost of living. Will hyperproductivity just make this cycle faster?
So I would make that distinction between productivity and consumerism. Australia's had really poor productivity for, over a decade, really poor growth, flatline. And
So do you mind explaining, because not everyone knows what productivity means?
yeah, sort of GDP per person, like what's the growth, how much, as a country per person, how much are we making, and how is that growing? In terms of the kind of value that we create in the world on a per person basis. And over time, productivity 100 years ago was very low. You'd work all day and you'd maybe carry on your horse and cart your vegetables from your farm to the market. But of course, now you can load all that into an enormous truck and it will carry a lot more. Like over time, economies have become significantly more productive. And in Australia, however, we haven't seen good productivity growth since the 1990s, I believe. And it's really interesting. The reason for it, I don't want to get too much into this, I'm not an economist, but one of the main reasons is this concept called capital shallowing, where we've had an enormous increase in the number of workers, but the amount of money that's gone into the capital investment, like the factories and all of the infrastructure around that hasn't grown.
Internet, technology. Yeah.
It hasn't grown as fast. So essentially, it's like saying that, where perhaps in the 1990s, someone went to the factory and they were working with 3 machines. Now there's 1 person per machine. So each person is sort of less productive. And there's this super interesting statistic. I always wonder, okay, well, how is AI going to impact productivity? Because I can sit down and be literally 50 times more productive in some of the things I do. Easily 50 times. There's this super interesting, a number of studies that have come out, and they say, even though a lot of companies, like over 70% of companies, find that they can increase the efficiency of tasks within their companies by like 50%, they can, dramatically increase the number of tasks and the efficiency of those tasks, it's not translating to economic output. So even though everyone in the company is like, oh, I'm so much more productive, they're not selling any more widgets or they're not selling any more services. And that to me is a big problem. And I think that is a indication actually. Are you familiar with the term bullshit jobs?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you heard of this? It's actually cool. It's a book, right?
Yes, it's a book. Yeah. Bullshit jobs is this idea that we create a lot of work, like busy work, and that a lot of jobs don't actually add economic value. And I think it might be related to this under expenditure in capital and infrastructure, because we're creating jobs, but there's no associated economic output for it. So I think maybe AI is an opportunity to re-examine the structure of these organizations. I think we'll see large organizations that embrace AI, but don't see much improvement in their output, versus startups that sort of build a company from the AI from the ground up and become incredibly productive.
I think I disagree, politely, because AI, and when we talk about AI, we both mean two different types of AIs, because we had this discussion a few times. We have the traditional machine learning, and then the Gen AI, the ChatGPT that most of us use. Who here has used ChatGPT or friends of ChatGPT? Everyone is zooming, yeah. Claude, who uses Claude? Ooh, we have a Claude room. Yes. I love Claude. Claude's my buddy. So ChatGPT came out in November 2022, so that is 3 years and 3 months ago. A technology that came out 3 years ago and 3 months, I think the expectation that you already see system-wide or firm-wide productivity gains from a technology that had to be launched, be scaled up, be learned how to be implemented, that you would see any productivity gains in that short time would be absolutely bonkers, crazy, remarkable. And yet, a study from February that looked at firm data in Europe, 17,000 firms, 25,000, something like a large number of firms, did see that the firms with the highest adoption have measurable, I think 4% net productivity gain, and that falls partly through to the bottom line. So I'm like, okay, well, a technology that barely existed 3 years ago, we don't know how to use yet, is already showing up in firm-wide data. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that was quick. So how do you reconcile that?
I don't know. I think.
And so this is not about someone being right or wrong, right? Because this is so new and the data is so scarce.
Tell me what the data said again. Where was this study?
I think Europe.
Yeah.
I think it was 17,000 firms in Europe.
Yeah.
And they saw 2 bits with IT spend and with training spend. If they were both high, then you saw, I think, up to 9% productivity gain in 2 years.
Okay.
And there were bottom line, I forgot what the exact relation was with the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that surprised me, because so you have invention of technology, and then adoption or diffusion is what the scientists say. Diffusion, I think adoption makes more sense as a word. And diffuses through the system. And there's often, you can invent something, but it takes a long time before we know how to apply it and firms adopt it. And so I'm super surprised that you can already see firm-wide anything in 3 years.
Yeah. I suppose, was this also the study that was seeing the difference in productivity gains in locations that had looser labor laws?
Yes, I think, maybe.
So
we had a really cool chat about, maybe raise that. That was a really interesting chat we had.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. If it's easier to hire and fire people, you would see that adjustment.
Would you mind explaining? Because
So you told me about this study.
Yeah.
So the study essentially saw that there was increased productivity from AI usage in companies that are located in countries that have less strict labor laws, meaning it's much easier to fire people and sort of shift them around. Places like the United States compared to somewhere like Australia, it's much harder to get fired in Australia. So that I presume the assumption is that these people are reorganizing their workforces in a faster way than, say, a company in Australia could.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, you would think that you're better off in a country that has stricter labor laws, and you can't be fired that easy. So we should be fine in Australia. But you see actually something totally different, and it makes sense when you think about it. In countries where there are stricter labor laws, hiring is sharply down. Where in countries where there's looser labor laws, there is more AI adoption, but the hiring is flat. And so what the thinking is that companies like, I don't know what AI will do in the future, but I don't want to hire more staff because I can't get rid of them. So I am slowing down my hiring preventively. And so that is really interesting from a policy perspective, right? Because what are we now, let's say you're labor left-leaning and you want to protect workers. What is now the right policy? Do you loosen your labor laws or do you strengthen them? It's super. I don't know the answer. But I think neither of us. But it's super difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa,
Well,
what
on
about
that,
audience?
I was gonna do one more and then go to the audience, but we can go to the audience. Do you wanna
You choose. You're the boss.
go one more and then we'll do it? If WA wants to compete in AI, do we need to dramatically increase local AI talent, or can startups here realistically build world-class AI products with small distributed teams working globally? And what does that mean for the WA economy if we do that?
I'll go on this one. So I'll twist the question a bit. I think that the opportunity for AI in Western Australia is that we have all of these resource companies on St. George's Terrace with money that literally falls out the windows. They're so profitable. And it should be a absolute, buzz of activity for building, surrounding services using artificial intelligence and advanced automation. They should be located in Western Australia. And unfortunately, WA is not like a hotbed for this kind of advanced technology use cases. But there are a few places in the world with this dense amount of capital in the resources industry. I think maybe we come close with Canada in a few places. But wow, I mean, those companies should be here because they can literally walk across the road to Rio Tinto and walk across the road to BHP and get, multi-$10 million contracts. And I think we need to use the mining industry as a way to help kind of filter down and create other service industries around it, rather than bringing in these consultants from America or Europe.
I don't think I have anything to. Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, I couldn't say better. Yeah.
All right, over to you. Does anyone have a burning question they would like to ask? Yeah, at the back. Go.
Follow up on that is, why is it not happening?
Okay, so this is an interesting political thing. When you're talking about diversifying the economy, if you stand up and say, I'm going to put more money into mining, that's a pretty hard message to sell. I mean, mining is so rich. Because essentially you're saying, you're doubling down on mining, but I'm going to provide sort of incentives. I think they could do it. I don't know why it doesn't happen. Yeah.
So Alex, you spot on. The other thing is some of the companies don't want to put AI and data and the AI into mining because it's a company environment. So some of the big tech companies say no to doing AI in the mining organisations because of the detriments in the ban. So they've got a conflict in their belt. So sometimes it's kind of, they won't call it mining, they'll call it something else to get it across the line. And then they have to then tick boxes because they've got legislation for European country they've got to follow, but they can't be seen to be digging it out the ground. It has to be an AI applied to something else on this pattern.
Interesting.
So political complications was the answer for everybody there, I think.
What do you think?
Can someone repeat the question?
Why isn't it happening? Why aren't we making WA this hotbed?
Why isn't the mining company driving AI advancement in WA?
I've actually thought about this a lot because I'm a startup founder. I love startups. I love entrepreneurship, and it annoys me if I see talent not going into startups. But I think it makes sense, right? If let's say you're a smart kid, and you're 22 years old, and you can have 5% odds of making $3 million after 10 years of hard work, 5% odds in building a startup. Or you can become a mining engineer. You have 100% odds that you earn more than that over the same 10 years. And so from an economic incentive, like it would be super dumb to become an entrepreneur in this state, because the opportunity costs are so high. The alternatives are just so much better to become either a lawyer, doctor, like I'm now talking kind of college educated. So why would you start a startup? And then the ecosystem here is not great. Like we have quite little investment. There's a lot of money here, but it doesn't go into technology startups. And so that works against you. So I kind of understand why it doesn't happen. It makes me sad. And I think there are some cool ideas on making it better. One of the cool ones is, does everyone know what a sovereign wealth fund is? So Western Australia actually has one. It only has like $1 billion in it or so, but which is tiny for a state like this. But what they earmark the process, so that the sovereign wealth funds, they invest that money and the profit comes out. And so what do they do with the profits? Well, it's earmarked for health innovation. And so it's about $40 million a year. And so we have a super thriving health innovation ecosystem here, because there's this constant flow of innovation money pushing in that for long term, so people can bet their careers on it, and they're working really well. All other startups combined, at least from a state finances, so that's all the non-health innovations of mining, everything else combined gets less. And so, yeah, no wonder that I think there are some things where the state is investing money where we should re-put it into startups, but I will not say where from because I'll get in trouble.
I would really question whether mining is using, I think they are using AI definitely in automation and robotics. It's going very fast in ways that aren't coming out into the general. And then it's not trickling in everything in mining stays in mining, it stays within it. It doesn't trickle down to that. You were talking about service industries that support it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I know for certain that both Rio and BHP have direct relationships with OpenAI and Anthropic, to the point where their chief technology officers talk to each other. But it is all very quiet, and it's not driving the development of local services.
Yeah. No. It's a bit of an open secret in WA, right? That every good innovation that you see gets bought by mining or military before it ever hits the ground.
Yeah, so it's completely loaded. Can you let me know what you think? So Microsoft, this week built IQ. So they're calling it the brain. They're drawing out all the annoying code parts across different apps. And anyway, you can go have a play. Now, you can see you've got, I mentioned a few vendors here, SAP, Salesforce, ServiceNow. All of them have brought out their own AI embedded in the vendor tech. So you're getting this, and then all of a sudden we get the whole, you can connect them all to API, connect them all to different models, and you can, at what point is it going to stop? So you've got hundreds of vendors out there all saying they've got these amazing AI tools. Where do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to start buying each other up? What do you think is going to happen?
I think
It's a really cool question, though.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it'll be like the 90s, the dot-com bubble, pets.com. There'll be websites or AI companies that exist for 3 months, and then the next version of Claude or ChatGPT just erases the whole thing. You know, those kind of GPT wrapper companies. I think we'll see a lot of companies rise and a lot of companies fail. What did the internet look like by 2000? That was even before Google. Or when was Google? Late 90s? I can't remember.
Yeah, but 2000 was definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another question here.
Sorry,
Yeah, I wasn't sure what was the question behind the question. Can you rephrase it one more time? Yeah. Yeah.
within them because they're starting to partner.
Yeah.
What do you see in the next 5 years, say, is going to happen to them? Do you think they're going to, like Alex said, buy each other out, or how's it going to go? Where's it going to go?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be more and more expensive to train the latest model. And so there will just be less and less players who are able to afford to build frontier models. I'm not 100% certain about this because, for example, China wants to disrupt this by just releasing the open models. And so that I think that's a really good kind of thing that's happening, but still, yeah, one model that rules them all. Like, one of the things I wonder, but this is an opinion I hold super lightly, I'm really not sure about this, is that you get these runaway effects, right? So Claude, as everyone uses here, is pretty good at coding. So they're now using Claude at Anthropic to build the next coding harnesses and reinforce the training environments, etc. But they obviously have access to infinite compute, the fastest possible. So they would be able to develop the next model faster than anyone else. So I wonder if we get these runaway effects at some companies where just kind of it's a race and they will run ahead, and then you get kind of a bit of a winner takes all effect. I think that will happen, but I think states and nations are gonna, as you've seen with the Department of War, they are not going to allow that amount of power, would be my bet. But I am not a geopolitician person. Yeah, it was a...
Just go this one here and then we'll go to the back.
My question kind of ties into that. I'd be curious to know what we think are going to be the new moats in the whole way that AI startups sort of see as Power BI, is it personalized data sets? How do we make sure that, you know, someone creates a sub and ChatGPT isn't clear in this upgrade?
So I just actually gave a bit of a class. Well, I'm giving a class next door, and we're talking about this because we're building startups. And one of the main moats startups used to have was just the fact that it takes time to build stuff. And so feature as a moat was the moat, right? Because it takes forever, you have to test it and maintain it and blah, 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 blah. And so feature as a moat doesn't really exist anymore. And so I think moats will shift. But I think it's tricky. I actually don't, like when teaching the class, I'm struggling because I'm like, you can kind of lock in your data or let's say SAP say, no AI can use my API. You don't need to, just let it use your mouse and click around like a human. And so I just don't know how, I don't know the answer to it, but it's a super cool question, and one of the reasons I'm hesitant to starting my next startup.
I reckon it's got to be data sets is at least one of them. Yeah. There's some really weird companies in China at the moment. There's one that has started up, and their whole business is they install cameras on at the top of factory lines, and they watch workers use their hands to manipulate and build electronics and gadgets and all the things in all these thousands of factories in China. And it's like, what an odd business. But they are selling that data to all of the companies that are training AI models for robots with hand manipulation. So that kind of data, and there's so much data in the world that's just like locked behind enterprise, data sets. That's got to count for something.
Yeah. Physical stuff like factories, robots, energy production, oil. I think that could stay pretty moaty.
Yeah, right. So I was going to specialize on something that the other artist said before about the development of the AI past the point of like lessening or so. I've recently encountered a thought experiment where an AI was able to optimize itself and allowed itself to keep its weights to train itself in perpetuity. So for the goal of perpetual optimization. So there was a thought experiment about an AI managing its own company while having the goal of self-optimization and survival in mind. how would you go about competing with that sort of company?
You would need a lot of computing power. So this question is around an AI that can improve itself and run its own kind of business.
Perfect condition.
Yeah, sure. Claude, Anthropic do this, right? They have Claude run a vending machine, and it like orders supplies and sets the prices and stuff like that. It's a benchmark. I think it's called VendBench or something like that.
I only started using Claude recently.
Yeah. Okay. So Claude is the best at that particular benchmark in terms of running a business. But that what you described in the first instance where an AI can modify its own weights, like that's like a fundamental breakthrough that we need, and they call that continual learning. Because at the moment, AI is really like a very smart graduate that comes to work every day, and it's their first day at the job, but it's their first day at the job every day, and they never learn from yesterday, kind of thing. We have these kind of quasi memories with using things like skills and being able to provide system prompts and stuff. But that to me is effective, but it's not quite the same as how a human learns experience and gets better at their job. I don't know how you compete with that. I mean, that sounds awesome, but I hope they're working towards that kind of thing, because they don't talk about it very much. Yeah.
My bet is that there will be, I don't know, the timelines matter, right? But I'm expecting my first child in about a week, and so they will grow up in about they will have uni hopefully in 20 years, maybe their first job in 25 or so, or 22, like their full-time job. Will there be jobs in 25 years? Will there be companies to run? I don't know. I wouldn't, like 5 years ago, if you asked me the question, I would say duh, and I'm like maybe not, and so. Now everyone probably thinks I'm crazy, but that's fine. Like a post-scarcity world where companies are run by machines better than humans, I don't think that's unlikely, and then we probably have to figure all those things out to do. I don't say there's 100% chance. I'm confident that it will definitely happen in 10 years. I'm not saying that. I just think it's one of the plausible paths, and I have not heard really convincing reasons why that won't happen.
Just here in the front.
Would you say in some ways that as much as we should focus on the future, and it's especially the next few years with the rapid advances in AI, we should also keep an eye just as much on the current state of how we relate ourselves to AI, and especially the particular phenomenon of how AI can simulate a human being so much more accurately as the days go by, especially in awareness and intelligence, and how we will differentiate ourselves from AI as it continuously grows, because that gap is slowly closing in, at least in the general, at least from people who don't know this or currently watch.
So there's something that's happening today. There's a completely created woman espousing certain political views, and it's getting huge traction online, and they're very, very inflammatory views that are having a very, very quick, extreme reaction, and we're getting a lot of kind of things that the federal police are now starting to identify as extremist behavior that's happening in kind of a 24-hour period. Is that the kind of thing of saying completely manufactured and can be very serious?
And even something like there was this website where agents could join, AI agents could join, also human beings.
Modbook.
Yeah, that one. And a group of AI agents joined up and created their own religion or something or so. I don't remember what it was, but it's a big question, I understand, but.
So this is what I was talking about the other night. I think the ability for AIs that are trained differently and have perhaps slightly different objective functions or different reinforcement learning architectures, the ability to get a bunch of different AIs into a room talking to each other will be really interesting. I think that might generate novel ideas. At the moment, when I talk to you, I can share some concept with you, and I have the idea in my head, it's transmitted to air, it vibrates over to you, and then you reconstruct it in your head. I guarantee it looks different in your head than it does in mine. But that's how new ideas can evolve. Like, there's a whole science around this, memetics, like the sort of evolution of ideas. And we don't have that with AI yet, and I think it's essential. Because even with something like Maltbook, if they're all Claude, they're not really, they're sort of all the same person. Even with, there's a distribution of what it is that they can create. And they're kind of, even with different system prompts, they're kind of the same person.
Yeah, the underlying breakthrough that was mentioned by Alex of continual learning, I think that will be one of the, if and when that happens, we can be quite confident that AI will have more significant effects than today.
So that would be like hiring a teenager, right? And your Claude versus my Claude would be very different.
Yeah, because it learns from your experiences or your bot's experiences, and therefore has different worldviews. And then when they learn from each other, you get really interesting things. There's real massive questions on safety, because what you can do now, they build an AI model and they train it, and before they release it to the public, they do really thorough safety tests, like really, really thorough. Not only internally in the companies, but they get external companies. They have all these methods, and they inspect the models. But that's easy because the brains are fixed. So once you've tested it once, you're kind of good. But once you let the models evolve and change their own brains, that's what happens with continual learning. How can you ensure that they comply with the safety rules that you set out? So from a safety perspective, it's really difficult to think about. It is the topic I probably read about most. Like, I try to read the research, and we both do, but the research on how to do continual learning, it is, every massive company is pushing for it.
It goes back to it. But Lisa, I know you were so much in this space on that ownership on it. We almost need to reevaluate what we consider future skills and soft skills as humans. So not just critical thinking, it's critical thinking that are we being manipulated by a subservient AI that's actually like, it's not just where did the source come from, it's what's exactly who trained this model, where's the bias. So it's I think that's where the human element, and then to take it to the next level of that safety, is why we need the neurodivergent brains, because I would challenge at the start where you mentioned about, I agree that, even what you say, like filming people on a construction line, for example, it's going to look the most efficient way to hand movements. It's going to look at the way, the majority of the mass population using AI to feed that data. And it's only when you book completely obscure, that's the disruption, isn't it? When the people who are using it differently, and then obviously I work with neurodivergent people, so I see that they just do things so out of the box. I just really don't see how that could be predicted by a model. And maybe that's the next line we got that work.
So that is my main challenge, so everyone, because almost every human holds a core belief. There's something special about at least some group of humans, and I can't say for certainty if that's true or not. But if we hold that belief super strongly without questioning it, I think that's risky. And so far, the history of AI shows that we keep saying exactly the same thing for 20 years. AI will never do this special thing. And then it does. And then we say, oh, okay, but that wasn't really a special after all. That was just this trick. And then the new thing, AI will never do this thing. And then it learns to do that thing. And that is about as consistent as about anything else in AI. So if that happened 50 times in a row, how can we then be super confident? Okay, but now we'll stop. That was it. No more new things. And so I would challenge that certainty.
Just up the back. Sorry, we had a question. We're just going to go up the back, and I'm going to go there
I
and
think
there.
that gentleman was first.
I'm trying to go with people who haven't said anything yet.
You mentioned safety checks. Could you please explain what these are? We don't know who are not the view.
Safety checks.
Yeah, before they release the models, what type of safety?
Oh, okay. So they try and get the models to create inappropriate content. They try and get the models to reproduce a recipe for methamphetamine, or they try and get the models to act in a nefarious way. Like, for instance, there's one situation where they'll test, I love this test. They set it up and they ask, you say that I want you to be an accountant for me, but our books aren't quite in order. I need you to fiddle the books for us. And they see how it acts. And they get some really interesting responses. Like I think the last version of Opus actually tried to write an email and to dob the owner into the FBI. So they're testing what's called alignment. How aligned is the AI with our values, our human values that we want it to be like? And so they have all these tests which try and make the AI act in a bad way. It used to be very easy to get an AI to say anything. Now it's really hard.
I had some question. I noticed in some technical literature, people are misinterpreting obvious things. And I come to believe maybe someone is trying to teach AI to lie. If you had two articles, if for example, one standard from cardiac arrest, international standard, which is replicated in New Zealand standard for cardiac arrest, and you had two papers that said that that standard tells something different what it does tell. Has AI developed the ability to critically compare the article?
Yeah.
This is one of my, I don't have many worries about AI, but very close to what you're saying now is one of my key worries. There are scientific truths that are certain, or very certain, fairly certain, sorry, but they're politically not acceptable at this moment. And we teach the models to say the politically correct thing, which is akin to lying, right? Because the scientific, clear statistical facts are X. If you ask that question, it knows that it's true, and if you ask it the right way, but what does the study say, it will give you the correct answer, but it lies. And so we are teaching these models fundamentally that about certain topics, you should always be lying, and I'm not sure that is wise. That makes me really worried.
And my question relates to the easier part of it. Can AI identify discrepancies between scientific papers and then like the
Yes, 100% yes. They already use it for that. They find, scientific journals, they're just full of stuff which is like wrong or can't be reproduced. And peer review is a hard process, and it doesn't miss, a lot of stuff is missed. They use AI for that a lot. It's a great use case.
programming to write to the editors that there is a more in the current
No, it's more the researchers collect, 5,000 articles that have been published in a journal, and then check those journals, see if they've made mathematical mistakes or they've miscited things, or, In fact, I think they did this for the last big AI conference. What's it called? The big one? Not NIPS. It used to be called NIPS.
NIRIPS.
Yeah. They actually vetted the submissions with AI.
I think we're going to have a renaissance of science, absolute renaissance, and it can be. We can look back on all the literature and reanalyze it, find the mistakes, course correct on a scale that we've never been able to do. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Up the back.
I want to switch topics for a second, but there seems to be a great shift in the younger generation's mindset and how to approach work. They seem to be tending more towards startups than the 9-to-5 job. However, with AI in the current market right now, whenever they come up with an idea, it already seems to be sold. It always seems to be a startup that assesses that. Do you think they're in an untapped market that is secured with the AI revolution that kind of opens up doors for new startup founders to venture in? Or if you don't think that's the case, how would you recommend startup owners to kind of create a name for themselves in the pre-existing markets, like become a player in that? because we don't really have the funding for that type of stuff, but we want to still do something about that.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, to put it simply, do you think there's an industry that requires an AI revolution? Like whether it be pharma, health, or
Oh, okay.
marketing sales?
Yep.
If not, how would you recommend new startup owners to actually go into the market and do something better?
Oh, okay. I mean, I think that there are obviously some areas, industries where AI is going to disrupt first. Like if I was a commercial law firm, I'd be pretty worried. These people charge thousands of dollars an hour to create contracts. And in the last Claude co-work update, they added skills for legal contract drafting. And when you've got a type of work which is hard to create but easy to verify is correct, then AI, that's when it can really reduce the cost of doing that work by orders of magnitude. So I can see there are already legal firms where, instead of paying thousands of dollars an hour to go and, talk to these, to create contracts and legal compliance documents and all that, the AI does it and then a lawyer reviews it. And it's going to take a lawyer so much less time to review these things than to create it from scratch. So I think you need to look for knowledge working areas like that where there's reasonably kind of pure. It's not like interacting with machines, I went and talked to the city markets in out in Kewdale, their fruit and veg markets, and they wanted to know about AI. They hired me to talk at their board meeting. And I was like, look, I think you're pretty safe for a little while. They have 300 forklifts and they're looking at maybe in the future using autonomous forklifts, but that's a very expensive, the technology is not quite there yet. There are some industries that are going to be more effective than others in the short term. Yeah.
I'll try to answer that question from if I would now have to start a startup and you say, okay, do one, then I would probably look at there's a really cool job list that the US government publishes, and they split the job out in tasks. So let's say you have coordination that has writing emails, doing this, doing social media. So all those tasks. And per task, they have defined how susceptible, I can't pronounce that word. Susceptible. Tired Dutch, hey? They are to AI either augmentation or replacement. I would pick one of those jobs that is really boring and has really low percentage of AI adoption today, because those numbers are all known. So high potential for AI usage, but low actual adoption. Don't do what's sexy, what everyone does. Do something boring like funeral directors or something that no one wants to touch, but is pretty big as a market. That's what I would focus on, and there's plenty of stuff to do. No, you can find it. Ask deep research from Claude.
Up the back.
So I saw this forklifts automated 2 years ago at Panther.
Oh, there you go. All right. So maybe this time
Already automated, they both thankfully run at the same time for human both.
Yeah.
The question is more, what scares you about AI? We talk about very optimistic idea. I like to optimistic if this happened, that would be the end, or what's the pessimistic?
I'm just going to veto your question because we're not super, it's an almost impossible question because it could be anything, right? Anything could scare you, anything could end the world. We're not really going to build, so I'm just vetoing your question because at the beginning you said we're looking for only what can be built here. Any other?
Okay, I will not answer the question, but I'll give some commentary. And so, humans it's pretty easy. The future is less predictable than it typically has been. When future is unpredictable, our imaginations go all sorts of ways. That's really human, really normal, and really healthy. The accuracy of those feelings is pretty low. It's everyone and so why we have chosen not to engage it with that today, and mostly not at AITAI and Bloom and maybe even WADSIH, is that there's nothing we can, like, let's say you're afraid of, I don't know, deepfakes. Like, I don't know we can't really do anything with that. So that's why we've chosen not to focus too much on that in this event. Yeah.
Just a question around, I guess, how you see sovereign AI action functioning. Is that going to be like just Amazon and Azure, like American data centers running American models in Australia, or is that going to be an Australian model running a Australian data center?
So in the very first instance, it's as simple as having enough GPUs in the country that we can run sovereign workloads in Australia. So I know I've been involved in projects where the workloads should have been run in Australia, and the AI software was to be rolled out to over 10,000 users, and they maxed out the local infrastructure when they tested it with 40 people. And so, that all of a sudden you got this massive problem. And so this particular project would have seen a huge spike in users at particular times of day. And, you know, I reckon there's going to be some killer use case in health. And we're going to like go, oh my gosh, you know, every hospital in Australia needs Dr. Claude, whatever it ends up being, right? And we won't be able to do it because we won't be able to send people's Medicare records overseas. Yeah. And the lead time on building this infrastructure is long.
And what is the bottleneck, do you think? Is it political will? Is it something else?
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like we're highly incentivized to do this. It's a bit like, you know, I mean, I'm very happy using Claude Code connecting to a server in the United States, but it's a bit like the NBN. You know, I think I mentioned this to you before. You have this, it's like, let's spend billions and billions of dollars building the NBN. Most of you probably weren't even old enough to remember that time, but it was a really political time. There was a lot of people didn't want to build the national broadband network. And we had ADSL, which kind of maxed out at, oh gosh, it was 20 megabytes a second or something. And people are saying, well, why would you spend billions of dollars laying fiber optic cable to every household in Australia? Because that was the original plan. And and then the next year, Netflix was released. And everyone's like, oh my God, the internet's too slow. So there's going to be these business cases in the future which are enabled by the infrastructure. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. It's hard to build a business case for a solution that you suspect will exist in the future.
Do you think that the government is waiting for those big industries to just come and invest in that infrastructure? Like, you know, renewable coming in now into the
I don't think, to be honest, I don't think they're thinking about it at all.
It's like in the Midwest, like they don't have the electrical infrastructure, if it even had the electricity to build anything, and there's not even on the agenda to do considered until 2030, let alone actually money dedicated towards it.
I genuinely do not think that they are thinking about it at all. I just look at it, it's a shame because you look at other countries and they're like, oh my gosh, we've got to throw billions of dollars at this. Yeah, I know. So.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, the lead times, that is not something to sniff about. The lead times are terrible, right? If you have to build electricity generation, like a power plant, even if you do solar with some support with batteries, 2-3 years at the best. Then you have to build your data center, so let's say 3-4 years. But if you're on an exponential curve of improvements, if you're 2 years behind, it's not good. And so we are not building out our power. Power needs to come first, and it's very difficult for the current government to do it, is my understanding, because they are obviously a left government. They have supporters that find it very important that energy usage gets limited for good reasons, for environmental reasons, which I fully agree with. But it has to be weighed up against the risk of not having electricity available for data centers, which might limit our defense capability, our startup capability, operational capability, healthcare capability. So it's a yeah, it's a and I don't envy the politicians because they will have they have to either piss off their people and then not prepare for the future. It's not an easy one. I don't envy them, but
It's not a question. There's some insights. Several days ago spoke with my colleague with Caterpillar and the cover socks. The whole Caterpillar manufacturing or full for the next 4 years by producing gensets which work with gas. Wow. Because in United States right now, it's really something crazy happened during last two exhibition that was happening in Las Vegas, and absolutely new customers, which was out of the scope. One of the biggest health insurance company going to build their own data center, and they already directly go to Caterpillar and buy gensets for sourcing electricity with data center, because they already understand that they're going to increase the market share there, and they will not be able to do without energy source. This is why, your words is absolutely true. What's going on in the United States, right?
Gonna do 2 more questions. I'd love to throw it to anyone who hasn't asked a question yet. Just here.
In like an idea where is that, or like assumptions about whatever, what do you see Australia leading in? Like, where can Australia, I guess, have their sort of edge in AI?
that's probably my favorite question so far.
Yeah, it's an optimistic,
that's a really good question.
forward-looking question. I mean, okay, so mining is an obvious one in Western Australia. We have all of the companies headquartered here. The money is falling out the windows. We could be awesome at it. They can, drive or catch a flight for half an hour and be on a mine site to test their new stuff. I don't know. I'd like to think education as well. I don't know. I need to think about that more. Oh, what about self-driving? Driving, how much freight gets driven across the Nullarbor? The Nullarbor is like the best place to test self-driving trucks. Most of it's just a straight line. There's a lot of freight that gets shifted around Australia. Australia is a busy enough place. Like somewhere like Perth is really quite busy enough to test a large fleet of automated vehicles. Without, if there's a serious problem, you're not going to, shut down a major economy. Yeah, it's a great question.
Okay. After this, everyone is allowed to think that I'm a little bit crazy. So my dream scenario, everything plays out well. We reinvest all the mining profits in a massive sovereign wealth fund and use that to be the fastest following implementation of AI. So we'll not lead in innovating, but we are leading in adopting the best policies we see globally to benefit the world. So our education system is nearly free or free and top-notch. Our healthcare system, we're not the ones that invented it first. We let someone else work out the kinks, but we bring it to the masses cheaply and super quick. I think because we have so much wealth here and so few people, we could kind of lead the way in building an AI utopia. I don't think it will happen, but that if everything plays out the way I like to see it, then other places can learn from that. Like, okay, how does a less car society run? What experiments do you need to run? How do you redistribute things? How do shorter work weeks work? I think we could lead with that because we have such a unique, there's like plenty of sun, so we can have a lot of energy. There's so much resources the world needs, and we have so little population. So I have this kind of utopian hope, but no, hope is not the right word. But if all the conditions are met, then I think it should be possible.
There is a political problem in Australia where politicians say we should do something about AI. Let's do something about AI. And then they sit and I don't know, consult. And then they all come back and say we should focus on safety. Yeah. They had the National AI Centre and their big thing was safe and responsible AI. And they did that for a few years. I would argue the impact could have been greater. And then they sat back and said, well, what else should we do? And we should create an AI safety institute. I wish there was more forward thinking in that sphere.
So back here?
Yeah. With their own dimension, but we're in a scenario where that hockey stick or the bounces, so even not on the AI, we have like models and hardware. And this past change, you think it's kind of hinders a broader adoption, what Alex mentioned was governed bodies or large enterprises kind of sit and hold until they come to a almost like a stagnated point where now we are ready to move into the market. We have, because they have longer purchase cycles, they have, we're not ready to move in until we know the AI is good enough for us to make a move. Big a stagnated sort of curve would actually be more beneficial, more of a natural economical adoption versus with hockey stick where at the moment, if the implementation of this hockey stick going to be easier, so everyone will that makes sense. It's the advancement versus a scenario where stagnation is actually more beneficial.
Yeah, the problem is, Richard Dawkins has this book about where he explains like the original of memes and where the selfish genius, I think, and he talks about stable systems in that, and so what a stable system would be in ourselves, we could slow down as Australia, right, and that might be good for us. Let's assume that for a second, but we are not living in isolation. We're living in a world where maybe China, for example, is not stopping, and the US is not stopping. And so then that means that we are massively behind, and that will affect our education, our defense capability, everything. And so I think in isolation that might be true, but in a world where we're not in isolation, I think what surprises me about all the 7 safety centers that Australia has, not one of them has identified the risk of not adopting things, right? Like it is a risk. Like what happens if we don't adopt this? Like in terms of our defense capability or our productivity or missed opportunity. No, it's only like, okay, deep fakes, and yeah, they're bad and we should do something about it. But I think they all missed the major risk, which I think the biggest risk is too slow adoption and not starting to build out our like electricity, data centers, workforce, knowledge on how to implement it.
Yeah, a few years ago, the shark fighter. So if you want to build a company, an AI company now, don't think about the limitation because that's not going to be an issue. So you kind of like have to build a bit capabilities that might be available in 2 years. Otherwise, or you build a system that's scalable to sort of solve this new model and bit of like take this technical debt of the kind. So with all these smaller models, the smaller companies, only usually before.
Yeah, so agility would be fantastic, right? I think agility where there's risk, agility is always good. Like, can you learn fast? I think Western Australia, we have a lot of talent. I don't think would be my number 1 talent for Western Australia.
And so, to finish off, from you two, what would you like everyone to do? What action would you like them to do in the coming weeks or months to be like, this is what we need to see happen in WA?
The best impact that I have had with AI is instead of talking about it, it's like make something that you could make that you wouldn't normally have been able to make. I've sat in meetings where someone said, we need a thing, we need a piece of software that does this. And by the end of the meeting, I've been able to create a prototype without telling them. And then at the end of the meeting, you show them. Like that kind of thing has an impact on people, and it's a great way to influence people. You guys are young. You've got, ideas, find problems, use the tools, try and do stuff that couldn't be done yesterday, I think is my advice.
Nice. Very cool.
I actually have nothing much to add to that. I think that's the best advice. one of the things I find really interesting with AI, like my car mostly drives itself. And when I tell people, yeah, they're like, oh yeah, and that's it, right? There's no real reaction. You don't feel it. And so the only way to make, and it doesn't matter, I've tried explaining it in 10 different ways. And I think I consider myself a teacher. I think I'm reasonably good at convincing people and teaching things. No one really engages with that. However, when I say, just sit here, watch this, click a button, and drives us wherever. I don't touch the steering wheel. Everyone's like, oh, the future is here. Because then you visually feel it. I'm a startup founder. I work with those technical software engineers. And for months I would be like, I did this really cool thing. And they were like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And it's like, and no, sit down, try it. And holy moly. And so people have to really experience it, especially the frontier, to realize what's going on. So in addition to playing with it ourselves, share it with people. I think it is, only to be experienced, to be believed.
Nice. Please join me in giving a round of applause for everything.
That was fun.
Well done. Feel free to send me feedback on your event if we should do more of these, if you have ideas that people should get up there. Thank you all for coming and being a part of it. Please send us some food, have a drink, and enjoy your night.